and welcome to the Craft and Calling podcast. I am your host, Christine Marie. I am so privileged to be virtually across the table from Brandon Smith. Brandon, you are, and I just loved how you introduce yourself by way of having husband first, father second, then entrepreneur, then builder, and then co-founder and CEO of New Vision Projects, which is a restoration and residential and renovation company. And you guys have been doing so much in not only just the construction space in terms of serving homeowners, but you're also working closely with other business owners through trade up coaching and consulting, which is your other business. And you are the host of the Open Concept podcast. And so you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot, first off. And so I just want to thank you before we even dive in for how you are serving and how you are showing up. You know, one of the things that we were talking about in the green room before we came on was that you want to die empty, having given everything you've learned away. And I just, that's such a beautiful concept. I've never heard anybody say that. So thank you first and foremost before we get started.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe that it is, and this has been ingrained into me through different coaches that I've had and mentors that I've had. But what I've really grown to understand, and the way that I believe that everybody should, to some degree, choose to live their life, is to wake up every single day and become the best version of themselves that they possibly can be, and share that with the world. And
Mm-hmm.
if everybody has that North Star, and everybody is open to sharing everything that they have learned, share their experiences, share their lessons, their trials, their tribulations, like, that's just going to make the world a better place. And so that's what I'm here to do. I've been building, we started this company here, the operating company, New Vision Projects, a little over 16 years ago. And since then, I've certainly launched the podcast, which I'm very blessed. We've released about 70 episodes now, and we're on track to release about another 80 this year. So very excited about that. It gives me great opportunity to sit down like we're doing right now and connect with so many people from all over the world that I've
Right.
never had an opportunity to sit down with and chat with. And uh, when I started, I got into construction. I don't know. Do you want me to get into some origin story stuff
I
here, or
love this.
I want to
Let's
go?
go. Keep
You
keep
want to
going.
go?
I love where you're going with this
I
already.
don't. I don't want to get too far off topic of your agenda here.
I'll
So
rein you
you
back
let me
in,
know.
but yeah, you keep going.
All right. So yeah, my I got into construction. I say I got into construction by accident. And when I was younger, I'm in early high school, right? They're very formative years, and at that time I was going through some difficult stuff at personally and at home. And at that age, my parents were splitting up, and I was not doing very well in school. I was told I had a learning disability. ADD was a big buzzword at that point, and I was falling asleep in class, and my teachers, sort of didn't really have a solution, and they always thought maybe I could do more, but at some point they just kind of gave up. And luckily there were pills for that type of thing, and that's where I went. That's what I was told I need to do. Here, take these pills. It's going to help you focus. What you need to do is actually take more schooling outside of school. So I went to Sylvan Learning, which is an after-school learning program. So I was going to do the thing that I hated to do even more after the thing that I hated to do, which was going and learning and sitting down and going over math and anywhere that I seemed to be struggling. And I would fall asleep there too. And I just did not want to be there. There was a lot going on. And at that age, because it's such a formidable age and you don't have a lot of life experience, you look up to these people, these grown-ups, right? You look
Mm,
up to the teachers, your counselors, you look to your parents, figures. And if they're telling you that you have a learning disability, or they're telling you you're not great at something, or you're never going to make it, you take that at face value, right?
mm.
And you don't have the skills or understanding to like really start to question that, to push back at this point. And that was the path that I went down. So I immediately, like, right, it's like grade 8, grade 9, into grade 10. Um, I adopted this understanding that I was probably not going to go anywhere. And I was always fairly entrepreneurial. When you're younger, when you're a kid, you're very creative, right? And it's like, and emotions are big, and you kind of like, I have a 4.5-year-old daughter at home, and the last thing she asked me the other day, we were sitting down, and she's like, Dad, how do dinosaurs yawn? Right? And it's just like, it's just very curious questions. And you don't have these constraints of thinking, and constraints
Yes.
or lack of imagination, because you don't have these external factors. And if you believe in God, if you believe in a creator, like, I've heard people say that maybe you're happier as a child because you were uh, you were more recently closer to God at that time. And it was I think
Wow.
it was Ed Milet that
Mm.
first said that, and I kind of caught on to it. I was like, I don't know, maybe there's something to that.
Hmm.
God, creator, universe, whatever maybe you're connected to. But throughout that process, before that, I felt I was always very entrepreneurial, right? Everything from I still have photos of my sister and I when we were younger, and I would collect rocks, and we'd set up a table, and we would sell rocks. Other kids were selling lemonade and iced tea and stuff, and
I love that.
we were selling these little individual rocks that we would polish up and sell them for 25 cents, a dollar, some of them $2, but like we would just look at it and say, like, oh, that one's kind of cool. This one should be worth a dollar. And so we would do that. And at an early age in high school, I fell in love with snowboarding. That was an outlet for me, and I decided that was what I was going to do. I was going to become a professional snowboarder. And I left a lot of high school, and I spent a lot of time up on the
Mm.
mountain snowboarding, because that was a space where I developed friends, I developed mentors, older kids, teenagers, people in their young 20s that I really looked up to, and they were doing the thing that I wanted to do. And with snowboarding, could see really incremental progress, right, as you were getting better. And that was awesome. That was why I fell in love with that, because there was very little judgment, and it was always somebody was pushing you to be better. And you're seeing these guys that are hiking back up, and they're hitting one jump in the park, and they're unstrapping, and they're hiking back up, and they're doing it again. And that kind of repetition just got started getting ingrained to me, and I really loved that. And that's where I thought I was going to go. But found out that becoming a professional snowboarder was a pretty difficult thing to do as well. And then I really wanted to work, right? I got this understand. Okay, I'm now 14, and I wanted to find a job, so I went and I handed out applications everywhere. And the place that ended up hiring me was McDonald's. They
Hmm.
hired me. They said, come in for an interview. I couldn't start. I got hired. I couldn't start until I was 15, because that was the age that I had to be in order to work. And it was awesome. Right? I was like, yes, okay. I'm starting to get some traction here. And
Mm.
I told my mom, and she was very excited, and starting this thing. And then less than 3 months later, I was fired from McDonald's, from like the place that's the easiest place on the
Oh
planet to
no.
get hired from.
What happened?
I didn't make it past my probational period. I still, to this day, don't know. I know I know I handed out a few batches of frozen fries, but either way, I wasn't McDonald's team material. And so all of a sudden there was this buildup. And then I remember walking home, because you're not old enough to drive at that point. I was walking home, and I had to go back, and I was making up all these excuses in my mind of what I was gonna tell my mom, right? That I had just been fired from McDonald's. And all of a sudden, all these external factors that had been putting so much pressure on me throughout those early years, like all of that was coming back, right? You're not good enough. You're never going to make it. You've gotten fired from McDonald's, and then it's like, of course you're not going to make it. Like, this is just another sign
Wow. Mm.
down. She was renting a house, and
Hmm.
it caught fire, because there was a tenant living downstairs, and she had fallen asleep, knocked over some candles, and the house burned. She had to move into to a rental suite, and the landlord that owned the home, he was a recruiter for a large construction company here. At the time, it was the biggest construction company in Canada. I was helping moving couches and move my mom into her new little rental suite. And he said, have you ever considered construction? We're always looking for young men to come in and labor. Do you want to come down for an interview? We talked about it back and forth. I said, yeah, let's do it. I'd love to come down for an interview. So I went down to the head office, and I thought I was walking into an interview. In fact, I was showing up to sign my papers. I had no idea what I was doing, but they just gave me some papers, and they said, "This is how much you're going to make. This is where we need you to show up.
Wow.
This is when you're going to start. This is what you're going to need for your first day." And I was like, "All right, I guess I'm in construction now." So showed up on that first day, brand new. I like shiny new pair
And
of
Brandon, I
boots.
gotta tell you that I'm sure you know this. The fact that you showed up in construction, there's a lot of people that do not show up on their first day.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
that
I
points for you already.
I came to understand that this was the case, right? And so I I showed up because that's what I did. I showed up every day on time, and I put my head down and I pushed a broom for 3 months, and then I was handed a squeegee, and I was pushing water off of concrete slabs so that carpenters and other tradespeople could come through and they could lay out on the concrete. And I just did what I needed to be told. And it was about month 4 or 5 where my manager had asked me if I'd ever considered an apprenticeship. I didn't even know what an apprenticeship was, so I had to get into that and ask that. But he said, you go to school for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. It's a 4-year program. You come out of it, and you get this thing called a Red Seal certification, and you become a certified tradesperson. I said, yeah, that sounds good. Like I can still work and make money. I said, yeah. And I'm like, all right, that starts to make sense. So all of a sudden now similar to what was I was seeing while I was learning to snowboard and progressing in that, I was starting to progress in this job. Somebody else had started to believe in me and appreciate what I could do. And you're so right.
Right.
Just showing up, right? This
Yeah.
first bear, like it's amazing how many people just don't show up as sort of so like the bar was not set very high.
Hmm.
And I continued working with that company for 5.5 years, almost 6 years, and I worked my way up. Got continued to get promoted. They put me through school for construction management, and they got me into doing things like surveying. And I kept on taking more and more responsibility. I was the head first aid attendant. Well, on a job site at the peak, it had about 900 guys on there, and I was responsible
Wow.
for that. And so as a young
Yeah.
guy, I was starting to get more and more responsibility, and I was very
Hmm.
interested. And I went to my first year of trade school, and something happened that I thought I would never happen. I fell in love again with learning. I fell in love with
Mm.
mathematics. Like I graduated high school with grade 10 basic math, which was like I got I think a C minus in grade 10 basic math, which was the bare minimum requirement to graduate. And I started falling in love with things like trigonometry because I understood practical applications and how this was actually going to work and how we would lay out walls and how we would lay out stairs and how this all came together. And all of a sudden things started clicking.
Mm.
And what I realized throughout that process was it wasn't me. All of that had been inside of me at some point. All of that love for learning, that love for growing, that love for showing up, that love for committing to doing the thing, it was always there, but it was never harnessed, and I didn't have the skills to find that out and to find that out about myself because the external pressures of other students, teachers, parents, counselors, like it was so heavy that I couldn't get outside of that cloud to actually be me. And construction really
Wow.
really did that for me. And uh, it was about 2010. The Olympics came to Vancouver, here where I'm recording out of, and construction shut down for 3 weeks or so while the Olympics came. And I used that as an opportunity. Prior to that, I was picking up a lot of side projects, doing small things, building decks, fences, etc., for clients. And I I found this newfound love for entrepreneurship again, and just really wanted to be creative. And I saw where these lifelong superintendents that this project had been, and made good money, but they've been there 20 years and 30 years, some of them, and they're career commercial construction guys, and that looked awesome, but it just wasn't
Mm.
for me. And so when the Olympics came, it came time to go back to work. I used that as an opportunity to say thank you for this opportunity that you've provided me. I'm going to go and do this thing on my own, and that's when started New Vision Projects. That was about
Hmm.
16 years ago. So um,
Wow.
that was wild. But one of the things that
Yeah.
construction allowed me to do, um, and very thankful that I had this opportunity to get started in construction early. But from somebody that barely graduated high school, I became the first person in my graduating class to buy my first home at the age of 22, my second at the age of
Wow.
23, and I started my own company here at 24. And it was because of construction. It was because of this industry that we are in that I was blessed with that opportunity to do that. And
Mm.
without construction, that never would have happened.
I want to ask, I have a couple of questions, but first, just want to answer a friend in the chat asked, do the trades pay well? And it sounds like you just answered that. Yes.
They pay well, but certain trades certainly pay more than other trades,
Right.
right? So
And yeah, how would you actually, for somebody who is not in the trades, what is a good way to know right out of the gate? Is it based on, effectively, is this a high dollar service that we're providing? Is that a good way to tell?
it really depends on what you're after, right? Because
Okay.
if the idea is you want to get into something simply because you want to be in a trade that is going to pay the most, then I may
Mm,
guide you in one direction, right? But if it's something that you one day want to build your own business around, I might give
right.
you I might give you information to go in a different direction. But I really encourage you more than anything to, if you are interested in getting into trades, to try different trades. And if you are getting into it, go to there's a lot of universities that have trades discovery courses that give you an opportunity to do a couple weeks in here, a couple weeks there, a
Mm,
couple weeks there, a couple weeks there. It's a good introductory course that usually takes 6 months to a year, but you get to try a bunch of different stuff and see what you love, because
what good advice.
you need to if you're going to be doing anything for a significant amount of time, and if you want to become masterful at anything, you
Mm,
need to dedicate, and you at least need to go in with the mindset that you're going to be committing to doing something for a decade, right? Because people so often overestimate how much they're going to get done in a year and wildly underestimate how much that needle can move for them in a decade. And 10 years goes
mm,
by so quick. Even if it doesn't work out for you, I would still go in with that mindset of this is going to be something that I'm going to commit to. And the only way that you're going to be able to have the energy to continue to commit and the confidence and grit to commit to something for that long is if
mm.
it's really on your heart, if it's something that you're thoroughly enjoying. If you're not going to be able to thoroughly enjoy it, you're not going to last very long.
Brandon, I really appreciate that perspective around, do you even have the desire? And the why needs to be beyond the financial.
Mm,
And for so many of us, I think that a why could be my heart's in this because I'm providing for my family.
mm,
That's actually, perhaps it's not necessarily the specific job, but it is tied to a deeper why that propels you to work hard and show up, to your point. So, there's a lot happening right now in the world regarding layoffs. And, there used to be the greatest job security in IT and being a software engineer. And now that is, SaaS is dying on the vine. So
mm.
actually, there's a lot, and I'm sure there's a lot more interest in the trades these days as a result of that. And so, where would that school that you were talking about, there's multiple in multiple cities.
Yeah.
Are there any specific ones that you would encourage folks to consider, or are just, hey, just start kind of at the bottom and then work your way up? Or do you think that that education is the
Well,
best pathway?
specific schools in our area really are BCIT and Quantum University. Like those are top trades schools. BCIT, British Columbia Institute of Technology, they are have been the forefront of construction innovation and technology innovation for a long time. Excellent school, great courses, micro courses, larger courses, full term courses. They're going to really provide a lot of great information, great professors, great information. I would encourage you to do that. But before even going to school, I would consider going out into the field and working and trying it, right? And before, even if you're not going to do the trades discovery course, before jumping into a trade and saying this is something that I'm going to do, I think you need to get out there and you need to try. You need to get your hands dirty, and you need to talk to different employers and see what the landscape looks like, right? As if you're talking to
Right.
a business owner and they're saying, you know what, this is really an industry that is potentially going to, get taken over. It's dangerous, dusty, dirty, right? Like these are jobs that people aren't going to want to do for very long, and those are going to be the first jobs that are probably going to be taken over as technology, AI, machine learning, robotics start coming into play. um, I consider what other areas could you go and test out, but go talk to
Mm,
business owners. Like, don't be afraid to get on the phone and call owners and say, you know what, I'm considering a trade. I just want to know,
mm,
what is this about? What do you offer? What do you know? The good, the bad, the ugly, and try and get a sense of direction. And I love what you said about the why. One thing that I do want to make sure that people understand is you don't need a huge, compelling why to get started, because of that why, that reason, that thing that wakes you up in the morning and keeps you fired up to keep going. That's going to change. It's going to evolve over time, right? I started this, working for myself when my why was very small. I didn't really have one. It was simply survival. I wanted to make money. I wanted to try things on my own terms. I wanted to build some confidence. That was it. That was the why. And then I started getting into building, renovating homes and talking to a number of different families and started understanding what we were doing for them. And
right.
then I fell in love with this purpose and this reason of understanding, hey, I came from a home that it felt unstable, right? My mom was over here, my dad was over here. I was jumping back and forth between houses. I was leaving textbooks all the other place, but there was never a place that I could really feel rooted. And that became a
Mm,
why for a long time. Was I wanted to be able to build homes that could keep families together so that they could develop roots and stability. And that was a huge compelling reason. But as
mm,
your skill set grows and your why continues to develop, now we have a huge mission. You fast forward down the road, we have a huge mission of putting a million roofs over a million heads. That's like
mm.
a 40-year vision. And I'm not, and
Wow.
I understand that I'm not going to build a million single family homes. I know I'm not going to build a million units, right? Multifamily units. Like, I've done the math. The math just doesn't make sense. But the
Yeah.
but through the homes that we build, through the impact that we can have on others in the industry, through the high school kids that we mentor, through the business owners that I coach, through the social media, the information that we pull out, through the podcast that we're doing right here, if we can have an impact on anybody that is going to contribute to putting roofs over people's heads, then I know that we're well on our way to completing that mission. And so, yeah, through different aligned verticals in the industry, that is really what we're pushing for.
Mm, so good. I'd love, Brandon, to take a step back because one of the things you said at the beginning, you were talking about effectively your mother not believing in you,
Mm.
to layering degrees of impact on an emotional level. Is that fair to say in summary?
I want to add, my mother was one person that did always believe in me.
Oh, she did.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it,
Okay.
it was it was at the time, it was myself that maybe felt like she didn't believe in me, but I know that she was certainly one person that always did. And she did.
Mm,
She put me in the classes that the schools told me that I needed to go into, and she
mm,
did the thing that she was being led to do, because again, she didn't know any different. And but I do feel that she did always believe in me, but I needed to live up to that. And go back to that story about getting fired from McDonald's, and what was I going to tell her? And I was this
Yeah.
big failure. But um, I remember when I went home, I mean, she gave me a big hug. She was super supportive, and yeah, she really was a big believer in me.
Mm,
But I had to shape that for myself.
yeah. Well, I mean, gosh, if that's one voice out of many, whose voice is louder. And there's something I'm curious about this, and so you tell me your perspective. From a man's perspective, how much does the man need another man's reassurance as a young man?
As a young man, it's wildly, while you become wildly impressionable, and having mentors, having coaches, having somebody that's
Right.
doing the thing that you want to do is really going to continue to shape the person that you probably will become,
Mhm.
or maybe that you're not going to become. And so I think
Right.
it is really incredibly important, especially because you are, and now there's less of that. But you need to
Mm,
become involved, and not just a man, but a woman as well, right? And
mhm.
you need, until you get to a point in when you become emotionally matured, spiritually matured, and you start to really understand yourself, can you eliminate that noise? Because your filters have become so much tighter. And so
Yeah.
that external noise, you can decide if in fact that's something that serves you or not. But
Mm,
your radar starts to go on when that information comes in, when people start saying the things. And um, yeah, that's it's for both men and women. But I work with young high school kids. There's an organization I've been working with called shout out to Yell Young Organization, Young
mm,
Entrepreneurial Learning Launchpad. And I work with these
mm,
grade 11 and 12 students. And the whole scenario is, throughout their semester, they have to launch a business. So it's a business, whether it's a product, a service based business, but they go through everything. Financial analysis. They do a market analysis. They learn how to sell. They learn how to speak. They learn how to pitch. And at the
wow.
end of their term, they pitch their product or service to a panel of Shark Tank type
Cool. I love
scenario.
that.
And but they learn everything. And
Yeah.
the one thing that I see about these young kids, and they get such a bad rap from so many people, right? It's like all
Mm,
these, these students, they hard work is dead, right? Hard work was for our generation. These kids don't know anything. And I don't see that. I see these kids here in these program, and they're so bright, they're so talented, but
mm,
they are less concerned about making money. They're less concerned about their financial or situation, or really bettering the situation for themselves, and they want to make
mm,
huge impact. And that's what these kids are driven by. They're like
mhm,
a global good, creating better opportunity and creating a better world. And they actually feel like we messed it up, right? They're like, the generations before us really messed it up, and now
mhm.
we have to do something about it.
Well,
And
and
they're very bright kids.
Brandon, I want to add to that too. Even I think that that is actually making its way up the generations. I remember the very first time I gave my keynote on stage, it was kind of a risky one. Actually, the person who helped get me that keynote, he was having another keynote, and he was like, "Do not do that." Because I started off the entire conversation with the consumer has changed. People are changing. People are attending therapy. They're really actually starting to cultivate themselves. And therapy, especially in the trade space, is still a dirty word.
Mhm.
It's we don't do that. Emotions are weakness. And yet when we start realizing that not only are the homeowners that we're talking to, they're actually the ones that are our customers and they're going to therapy, but how much more so the next generation coming behind us, our own kids. There's a lot of folks in the trades who their children do not actually want to follow in their footsteps. And I think it's so much of the time it is that disparity between no, in order to even have the desire to make impact, it requires a semblance of being even aware of that emotional aspect. Emotions do make up 50%, roughly 50%. I actually think that there's an overemphasis on emotions in terms of our makeup, but it's the right hemisphere of the brain. And so being able to tap into that not only allows for us to connect with the homeowner and to our end customer, but also the downline of our employees, but also our very own children that could be the very ones taking this business into the next generation. We talk about, are you trying to sell your business, scale your business, or succeed your business? If succession is something that you want to do, have you even made that bond with your children so that you have a vision big enough that they actually want to get on board with that and make the type of impact? Because if you're not impact driven, they're going to go find a why and a mission somewhere else.
100%. As a business owner, as a leader of an organization, with even if it's not children, if it's staff, if it employees, ultimately they are going to want to achieve their own goals. They're going to have their own reasons for
Yes.
coming working with you. And if your vision is not big enough that they can actually see their visions and hopes and dreams fitting
Yeah.
inside your vision, then they will
So good.
eventually pack up and go and find somebody else where they know that they can have their visions and life fulfilled through their
Mm,
own terms somewhere else. And as
so
soon as they
good.
find the confidence to leave, they will. Yeah.
And so the questions for everyone listening is, do you have a why, and is it compelling and big enough to welcome others into the fold of it, who can then carry it on for you? Because private equity is crouching at the door waiting to gobble up so many trades businesses, and I've seen firsthand. That was one of our clients where we were a fractional chief marketing officer. We were helping them grow, organize their data for acquisition and marketing budget, all of that good stuff, and I visibly watched the president age right in front of me when private equity came in. It
Mhm.
was kind of heartbreaking, to just watch the culture disintegrate in so many ways. And so it's like, if you want to keep this thing alive and vibrant, Brandon, I love what you said. Is your vision big enough? Do we actually take the time as business owners to even vision, to what you were saying earlier about imagination? I was talking to Naval Ravikant's brother, Kamal, and we
Mm,
were talking about what makes AI different from a human being.
mm,
And at the core, it's imagination. To be able to conjure up something new, AI can take the data that it has access to, and it's got a whole lot of data that it can access, and it's a lot smarter than most of us, but it doesn't have the ingenuity that comes from the childlike type of imagination. And so, Brandon, I'd love to hear from you. We're talking about you effectively, the way that you've been able to build your life was through shaking up these ingrained beliefs that you had about you for good reason. You were told this by so many different authority sources. So with you shaking up these ingrained beliefs, it sounds like part of that came from actually people believing in you and kind of countering the ingrained beliefs. But in order for us to really start to learn how to get to that point of creativity and imagination, it probably actually will warrant some ability to undo that which is ingrained in us, that emotions are weakness, that imagination is just for kids, like a lot of those kind of preconceived narratives and concepts that we have in our mind. So where do we start?
emotions create motion, right? So you're not going to be committed to doing anything if there's really no emotional anchor or emotional drive behind it, right? Why do people not get off the couch and lose weight until they hit rock bottom or something? They just break and they can't get enough. Like they just got to get off that couch and do the thing. It's because there's something really pulling at them. Why do people stay in a job that they like? It's okay. It's like, and they don't do anything about it. They have maybe these hopes and dreams, but there's no real emotion behind it. There's no reason why. Things seem to be okay. Um, they're not super happy. They're not super upset, but there's not really enough emotion there to actually create motion, to make change. And so, in your business, and that's what I love about podcasting. It's what I love about storytelling. It's what I love about keynotes, right? Speaking, you get an opportunity to create emotion, and the only way that you're going to get people to get off the couch and do the thing is if they feel something first. The only reason why you're going to be able to get staff and have teams that are going to continue to work with you year over year and align on whatever mission it is that you're trying to go out and serve is if there is emotion that's going to be tied to it. Emotions create motion. The other thing I wanted to touch on was AI, right? We're in this world, wild world. I have Claude working in the background right now. It's, it's unreal. I just
I love
gave
that. Yep.
local business association. I just put together an AI workshop for them to try and get business owners really on board and really give them some tangible wins, and how AI can really help serve them and really help their business be propelled forward in whatever it is that they're
Mm,
that they're doing. Really great workshop. But that being said, right, to your point, there's three things that I've identified that AI will never have:
mm,
vision, taste, and care. Right. So AI can help, based on whatever data you put in, build out a plan. It can help do that, but that's not necessarily going to be something that is going to move you, that is going to cast that vision. That's really going to reach your soul. It will never really have the same kind of taste that humans have, right? It's being prompted, and it will never really care. It will never really care about what it is. Like, it does want to be, it wants to serve you to the best of its ability, but it's not going to care the way that humans do. And so those are three things that AI will never take away from humans,
so good.
as far as I'm aware, or we're a ways away from that, anyways.
Yeah. Well, the vision piece is big. Um, I'd love, Brandon, how do you guide your business? You're 16 years young, and you have a big vision for it. How did you, and do you have a framework of every year we do this at the beginning of the year, or mid-year we do these mid-year meetings with the entire sales team to get everybody on track? Like, how do you, in terms of the hierarchy of the business, create the vision, return to the vision, and then distill the vision at every level of analysis?
Uh, there's a couple pieces to that, right? So there's a personal vision, and then there's a business vision, right? And the two, there will inevitably be some overlap. But my personal vision that I build for myself, and that I have, is only part of the operating company that I'm helping building the vision for. Is that going to serve? And there's other areas of my life that I'm very much that I love, that I want to go and really exercise and focus on, that has nothing to do with the construction company that I'm building. So two very, very different things. One is for the company side of things. Um, if anybody's ever read the book Vivid Vision, it's a book that was written by Cameron Harold, past COO of 1-800 Got Junk, and he wrote a great book called Vivid Vision. But it talks about, if you were to paint a very clear picture, it has to be specific, right? In detail, what does that look like for the company? So our vivid vision, I can't share my screen here with you. I'll bring it up maybe next time. I'll email
I
it to you afterwards. But
think you can. There's a share screen button if you want to try, but otherwise we can do it after.
I'll dig for it here. But the vivid vision is, it really is, it gets granular, right? And if you can't see it, and that same thing back to emotion creates motion. If the words on paper can't drive emotion, and you can't actually see that being possible, then it's never going to happen, right? It just becomes words on paper. It's the same reason why core values are often just words on a wall, is because they don't really resonate with your team, because you had said somewhere, I found it in a book, and it's like, yeah, trust, integrity, hard work, like those are the things that we care about. And it's like, all right, well, how, if we were to go and survey all of your team members, would they know in depth what your company core values are? Probably not. So we'll come back to core values. But for the vision itself, right? The vision that gets painted, should be a minimum 5-year vision, right? So forecast that 5-year vision. What does the business look like, feel like, taste like, sound like in 5 years? Everything to, like, what is the media saying about us? What are the local businesses saying about us? What sort of feedback are we getting on Instagram? What sort of feedback are we getting from the market? Like, who are we showing up as business leaders when we walk into clients' homes, when we walk into business meetings? Like, what is the energy that people feel when we walk in, right? And these are things,
Right,
when you start getting really granular about it, you can then start seeing this stuff with specificity, and then you start
right.
working and then you start working backwards from that. because tangibly, like, that is a 5-year thing, and then you can break that down to, what's going to be possible over the next year, and then break that down into quarters. And more importantly, though,
Mm,
what are the standards daily, hourly, that you're going to have to perform to make sure that you hit those goals, right? Because goals without standards rarely get hit, very rarely, right? So these little things, whether it's getting up early, right? It's
right.
what you say no to in the evenings. Um, how often are you exercising? What are you eating? What are you putting in your body? Like, all these little habits that we continue to build and stack daily, those are really going to be the things that are going to drive our outcome and give us the confidence to execute and hit these bigger goals that we may have along the way. And that daily standard, those daily non-negotiable items that you work into your
Mm,
calendar, that you work into your day, those are the things that are going to really start to move the needle. And it might feel slow at first. I was had a conversation with another builder on Wednesday, and he was having difficulty finding the reason why. And he's like, I've heard this stuff. I've heard people say you need to find a why and have a reason. I've never really been able to find this reason. And I started asking him questions. I'm like, oh, okay, well, start with what don't you like about the industry, right? What don't you like about your job right now? And he started listing these things of what he didn't like. He's like, I really don't like how customers come in, and I get this call, and I go in, and they feel like they've been ripped off before, and they just have this bad stigma about contractors. It's like, okay, well, what else? I really don't like how subcontractors, they just, like, they come in and they don't stick to their word, and they don't stick to their pricing. And it's like, okay, what else? And we started going down this thing. And it was like, this is something, if you could wave a magic wand, if money wasn't a factor, how would you go and change this? What would you do? And all of a sudden there was something clicked. And he's like,
right.
okay, I see what you're doing here. I see where you're going. And then that vision, out of just eliminating the things that didn't need to be there, all of a sudden gave room for all of the things that could be.
Mm.
And that became a powerful moment. And then how you want to shape that, how you want to start to define that, is going to really come down to those three things that AI can't ever, which is vision, taste, and care.
I want to double click on one thing as kind of we wind down here, Brandon. The eliminating inputs, eliminating narratives, eliminating distractions. The elimination factor, I think, is highly under discussed in terms of its real impact. Like, just existing in the silence to then even just process what's already there, much less create something new. So I really, that is gold. I'm so glad you said that. This morning, I was thinking about a season last summer. For about a 2 week span, I was up in Prince Edward Island for 2 weeks, and I did not have any inputs between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And so it was no phone, no books, no movies, no podcasts, no music, nothing. And and it felt beyond a detox. It almost felt like, okay, I'm detoxing from, it's like when you're addicted to something and you're going through the withdrawal of that. And it was hard. We're so used to stimuli, but in the elimination of stimulus, you actually can process what is even going on in my business, what's going on in my family, what's going on in my life. And then that's where creation lies. I was given the advice by the gentleman who grew Jiffy Lube to what it is here in the States.
Mm.
And, he said the number one thing I would encourage you to do is to take 8 hours every week to create, to just step back and just think about the business. So what you're talking about with elimination has so much power, to really change our lives. And you said, what are the parts of our habits and our schedules that are non-negotiables? So there's a lot of food for thought at the conclusion of this episode, Brandon. And I'm so grateful because your life is the impact, and it's like, okay, this is what can happen if you were to do these steps that you've discussed. There's a lot on the other side, but to be honest, and Brandon, I'm curious if you've seen this. I think it's really, really hard for us to have non-negotiables in our lives because it feels selfish.
to some people, but I believe that to have the non-negotiables in our life, that's what builds confidence. And look, I'm speaking from experience, and this is because I'm doing the thing, right? I'm continuing to build the company. We're 16 years in, so day in day out, I run and operate a construction company. Right, we build homes, we do land development. Right, we have deals coming in. I deal with real fire, real stuff all the time. Right, employees that come in that have bad days, need to train team members. I'm doing the thing, and it's it's because of those standards that I know that I've started to instill in my daily activities, that I can show up with fire. And some days I don't, but it's those standards, it's those
So
habits
good.
that are gonna continue to move things down the path, and
Mm,
that are gonna get you out of bed to show up, to get there on time and do the
yeah.
thing. Um, that you otherwise wouldn't. On those days where you just don't want
Mm,
to, you do them anyways.
hmm
And
So good.
yeah, I don't remember what your original question was there. I think it
Well,
was
I just wanted to hear if you agreed with that in terms of, I think a lot of the reason that can get in the way of being able to have the ability to kind of grow according to the principles that you're talking about is because we don't have non-negotiables for the reason that they feel selfish and that we don't understand, oh, that actually is a prerequisite to be able to to have the confidence and thus make the impact in the world that I want, both in my business, in my community, in my family, in my own life.
at times I think you need to be selfish in order to become selfless. Right.
Mm.
One of my mentors, business coaches, he's
Mm,
often said, you don't understand the amount of violence that I've had to
mm,
go through to be as gentle as I am today.
mm.
And uh,
Yeah.
and that's because in those early stages
Wow.
you're fighting. Right, my first year in business, I remember I had
Mm,
taken this chance, gone into business for myself, didn't know how to pay myself. I couldn't afford this. I had two mortgages at the time. If you go back to my original story, I had told you I had two homes. Decided, all right, I kind of got this thing figured out, I'm going to go start this business. First year, I was denied on my debit card. I couldn't buy a sandwich at Quiznos. Right, it was we went out for lunch, my business partner, myself, and sandwich went through the oven. I couldn't afford it. I didn't have a credit card because I was always taught that credit cards were bad. So I only had a debit card, and I didn't have enough money to pay for that sandwich. So I looked at my business partner and I said, this is never going to happen again. And, oh, can I, by the way, can I borrow $9? And that still stands out to me to this day as
wow.
as a big moment in when things changed. But we didn't know how to we didn't know how to pay ourselves. We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
We knew what we were doing, but the way that we
Yeah.
would, I know we're going a little over here, so I want to be respectful of time. Do we have a couple more minutes?
Yeah. Yeah, please.
Okay. Um, the way that we used to pay ourselves was we would sign a contract. At the time, I don't even know if we had contracts, but we had an agreement, handshake agreement, that we were going to be giving a price to do a thing. And then we wouldn't collect a deposit. We'd simply wait until the end of the project. About halfway through, maybe we'd collect some money if we had to pay some stuff. But the way that we paid ourselves was we'd sit down literally on the carpet. My business partner, he was renting a loft above a garage at that point, and we would sit down on his carpet and we would go through how much we got paid, and we would just write down pen and paper who we owed money to, the invoices that came in, the receipts that we paid for, and whatever was left, we would pay ourselves. Some months we
Right.
made money, some months we didn't. We didn't put anything away for taxes. Like that's the last thing on your mind. Like you're thinking about survival, and that was it. But it was, back to emotion creates motion. Right, it was that fire of having zero money in the bank, less than no money in the bank, to just like kickstart. Say, okay, we cannot do this on our own. We need help. I cannot do this. I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. And we need to go and talk to people that know what we don't know so that they can teach us. And it was that that time when we was able to give up the stubbornness that we had of this, just like, I'm just gonna white knuckle it through this thing called business. Um, that thing's changed, and
Right.
that was a moment that really drove me to go out and seek out mentorship and coaching and stuff that I'd never had before. But yeah, it's business is a funny thing. It is an ever evolving thing, and I am here, and I'm hopefully I continue to be healthy enough to work until I'm 80. Retirement looks different for everybody,
Right.
and I just I love what I do. I know what I'm going to go and do. I know what I'm going to go and build, and as long as I'm healthy enough to do that, I will keep doing it until I no longer love
Mm.
it.
Brandon, how can people follow what you're doing and your story and just your life and your businesses?
Best way to connect with me is on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. Find me there at Build with B
Wonderful.
Smith, or on our company page at New Vision Projects. But find us there. I'm on LinkedIn. All the
Wonderful.
socials, you can find me, Brandon Smith.
Great. But Brandon, I'm grateful again. I appreciate having guests on here who have the life that mirrors what they say. You know, people can talk a big talk, but to actually have the legacy that you're building in real time. And that's what it is. Legacy is built moment by moment. So I'm grateful for the legacy you're building and for your
If
time today. Thank you.
And if anybody wants to come and listen to the podcast, the Open Concept podcast, you can find it on
Hmm.
Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube. All the episodes are up there. I encourage you. Thank you so much for all of your time here today. I'm here
Mm.
rooting for everybody listening to win. So, yeah, have a great day.
Likewise. Wonderful.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you all so much for